With shorter shows like Demon Slayer, and I mean shorter shows relative to Mega Shonen like Naruto or One Piece, theories are usually hard to come by. This is usually because the universe isn't as big and filled with as many questions in a short, succinct story. I mean, Demon Slayer is probably going to end up being close to 100 episodes, but still, there isn't a huge amount of theories spinning at it. And this is because, as a story, it's relatively straightforward. There's no meandering side quests that bring up questions about new jutsus or sea kings. But that doesn't mean that there's no theories about Demon Slayer. In fact, there is a couple of good ones. And ironically, these theories spin out of the first episode, the first chapter of Demon Slayer. Well, at least the theory we're talking about today does. You see, because today we're talking about Nezuko. But what about her? Why she's able to transform, why her blood demon art only works on demons, or as to why she was chosen to become a demon. You see, there's a lot of mystery around the Kamado family's murder. How did Muzan find the Kamados? Did he know their connections to Yoruichi? And once again, most importantly, why Nezuko? For that matter, why make a demon at all? If you are going to the Kamados to eliminate the possibility of future sun breathers, why not kill them all? The answers to all these questions and more coming right up, guys. But please, for me, before we get into anything, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And while we're talking theories, I got a theory that most of my favorite subscribers that are watching this video right now would also love to see my content on other YouTube pages, like my YouTube page NCGamer23, where instead of talking anime theories, I play video games, and my other page, Hammer's Collection, where instead of talking anime, I unbox things from them. I've already put them away. I'm moving. So Nezuko. She's a bit of an anomaly within the Demon Slayer universe. She's a demon made directly by Muzan, who is not under the control of Muzan. But why isn't she under the control of Muzan? Why did Muzan want her as a demon in the first place, and how did he find the Kamados? Well, these are all really good questions, and unfortunately, to answer any of these, we kind of have to start at the beginning of Demon Slayer. So let's start these videos off in the way that we usually start these videos off, at the beginning. And mind you, if you're anime only for Demon Slayer, this will be spoiler free. Essentially, there's a couple of things we need to talk about in order to set the precedence for these theories. The first is Muzan, and the second is Yoruichi and Sunbreath. Let's go in chronological order, which leads us to open with Muzan. Muzan was born an incredibly frail human being. In fact, when he was born, people thought he was stillborn. And Muzan didn't cry until he was about to be pushed into a cremator. Mind you, this was over 1,000 years ago. As Muzan grew, he was diagnosed with a disease that would kill him by the age of 20, and he could barely live a human life. However, a doctor came to him with medicine, an experimental medicine that he had never used on anybody else in order to cure this illness that Muzan and only Muzan had. However, when Muzan took the medicine, he felt himself getting worse, and out of anger, he killed the doctor. However, after he's killed the doctor, he realizes he's starting to get better. Might have overreacted a little bit. And this medicine is actually what made Muzan into a demon. Muzan was cured, his strength was unbelievable, and he wanted to consume human flesh. There was one big issue. He could no longer walk in the sunlight. Muzan was cured from his disease. For all intents and purposes, he was superhumanly strong, and he would arguably live forever unless somebody with a Nichiren sword did a little slice. But he still wanted more because he missed being able to walk in the sunlight. So for over 1,000 years, Muzan has been trying to find a way for demons to be able to walk in the sun. And this is a very important tidbit. The desire to create demons that can walk in the sun and then either just have them or consume them to gain their ability is very important to a couple of the theories we're going to talk about in a second. Now that we have Muzan's general motivations painted out for everybody, we need to talk about Yoruichi. Yoruichi, for those of you who have seen my sun breathing explained video, will know he is the creator of sun breathing. He was born several hundred years before the timeline of Demon Slayer with a twin brother, Michikatsu. But in this era that they were born, twins were considered cursed because they thought one would come out evil and one would come out good. And since Yoruichi was born sickly, they decided he was the evil one. And they were actually supposed to kill him. But Yoruichi's mother begged with her husband to not kill him and just send him off to live with the monks when he was 10. A lot of things happen. Mostly Michikatsu gets trained to be a swordsman. Yoruichi also tries to be a swordsman and finds out he's better as a swordsman than Michikatsu. And this is because Yoruichi is constantly in transparent world, which means he can see bones, musculature, and nerves of other people. It's essentially like X-ray vision. And because Yoruichi is technically better at swordsmanship than Michikatsu, who's technically been training his entire life, they actually choose that they're going to send Michikatsu to live with the monks instead of Yoruichi, they being Yoruichi's parents. Yoruichi knows that they're going to do this, so he decides to leave the house, meaning that Michikatsu would get to live with his parents for the rest of his days. Yoruichi and Michikatsu wouldn't see each other for years, until Yoruichi came upon a samurai encampment where Michikatsu was the sole survivor of a demon attack. Yoruichi easily dispatches of this demon using his newly created sun breathing, which he tries to teach to Michikatsu, but Michikatsu can't learn it, so he adapts it to moon breathing. And this is a trend for Yoruichi. He wants to teach other people sun breathing, but they can't learn it because they don't have transparent world. So Yoruichi adapts sun breathing to each individual person he's trying to teach it to. This creates flame breathing, lightning breathing, stone breathing, wind breathing, and water breathing. Took me a second there. And eventually Yoruichi encounters Muzan. And without spoiling too much, let's say Yoruichi wins. But Muzan escapes. But who was with Muzan when he was pseudo-defeated by Yoruichi? Lady Tamiyo. You know, the scientist demon who was under the control of Muzan, just like Nezuko? But she doesn't help Muzan because she hates Muzan. So after Muzan runs away, Lady Tamiyo talks to Yoruichi and essentially tells him that she hates Muzan and she's gonna run away and do everything to try and reverse the curse of demons. But it's at this point that a bunch of other demon slayers come up to Yoruichi and tell him that Michikatsu has betrayed the Demon Slayer Corps by making himself a demon and murdering the Oyakata. The Oyakata is the head of the Demon Slayer Corps, you know, the blind guy. But Yoruichi takes the blame of all of this onto himself, letting Muzan get away, letting Tamiyo get away, and the betrayal of his twin. And because of this, he is exiled. And this is where it all ties back into our video. You see, on his way to go live in exile, Yoruichi stopped by the Kamados, who are Yoruichi's best friends. Specifically, Suyaku and Sumayoshi Kamado, who are Tanjiro and Nezuko's like great grandfathers. Well, actually, only Sumiyoshi is. But Sumiyoshi and Suyaku ask Yoruichi to do the sun breathing techniques for them, and Sumiyoshi commits them to memory. And Sumiyoshi is actually able to do the techniques in the form of the Hinokami Kagura, which is the dance that is passed down through the Kamado family, along with the Hanafuda earrings. So within the Hinokami Kagura, and therefore within the Kamado family, are all of the techniques of sun breathing. And even though Yoruichi isn't technically related to Tanjiro, he does have his techniques. And this is where the theories start. A key goal of both Michikatsu, aka Kokishibu, and Muzan was eliminating all sun breathers left on Earth. And for hundreds of years after Yoruichi's death, that's exactly what they were trying to do. Both Muzan and Kokishibu went out of their way to eliminate all sun breathers on Earth, because only those who use sun breathing could beat either Kokishibu or Muzan in a fight. In fact, in Yoruichi's lifetime, he defeated both of them in a fight. So the reason that Muzan wiped out Kamado's family was to get rid of all of the sun breathers. Muzan knew that as long as the Kamado family was left alive, there was a possibility that the Hinokami Kagura could be used against him, which is dangerous for him considering the fact that the Hinokami Kagura is a combination of all 12 techniques of sun breathing put in a loop in order to destroy all 12 of Muzan's vital organs. The Hinokami Kagura quite literally is the blueprint on how to kill Muzan, and it was created by Yoruichi, who had access to the transparent world and therefore could see all of Muzan's vital organs through his body. So the reason as to why Muzan was there to murder the Kamado family is pretty black and white. Revenge, safety, pretty much the same thing in this case. But what's not black and white is why he wouldn't simply eliminate everybody. Why make one of the Kamados a demon, especially when you have a track record of losing demons in the past with Lady Tamiyo? Well, there's a couple of theories as to why Nezuko was turned into a demon. There's 3 real ones that deserve to be talked about. We'll start with my least favorite and work our way up to my favorite, even though the last 2 are technically tied for my favorite. So we'll just start with my least favorite. This theory essentially states that Muzan made Nezuko a demon because he knew that there was one other member of the Kamado family who wasn't there at the site of the murder. Essentially, Muzan was creating somebody that could deal with the issue of a returning family member later on. And this isn't the craziest idea of all time. Muzan didn't know when this returning family member would come back, and therefore by stationing this newly formed demon inside the Kamado household, anybody who returns to said household will be murdered by said demon. And it's a fine theory, but it ignores a couple of things. Obviously, Muzan has the ability to track humans. It's how he was able to find the Kamados in the first place. However, this theory does rely heavily on the idea that Muzan knows exactly how many members of the Kamado family there is, which he wouldn't necessarily have any way to know. And this point is actually kind of backed up when you consider Muzan and Tanjiro's first meeting. When Tanjiro first gets to the big city and he smells Muzan and then begins to close the distance on him. But here's the thing. If Muzan knew the scent of the Kamados, of people he's been trying to eliminate for quite literally thousands of years, wouldn't he have picked up on Tanjiro in this crowd? And you could say, well, Nick, there's a lot of scents around him, so obviously Tanjiro's scent is going to get drowned out. But Tanjiro was able to sniff out him. And you could say, Nick, well, Tanjiro's sense of smell is preternatural. So is Muzan's. There's also the fact that when Muzan actually does see Tanjiro, he doesn't recognize Tanjiro, but what he recognizes is the Hanafuda earrings. This made him realize that there was another Kamado, because the Hanafuda earrings have been passed down the lineage of the Kamados for thousands thousands of years. Not thousands, hundreds. And with these 2 points considered side by side, I find it hard to believe that Muzan knew that Tanjiro was outside of the house. Truly, the only way that Muzan would have known that somebody was missing from the household is when he looked at all the bodies and saw that none of them were wearing Hanafuda earrings. This, and only this, could have led him to the realization that there could be someone else. Because obviously he knew of the existence of the Hanafuda earrings. It's what allowed him to realize Tanjiro was Tanjiro Kamado in the crowd. So on that point and that point alone, this theory does have some credibility, though it's kind of boring. Telling me Muzan, the king of demons, just can't count earrings on the ground, and he's like, well, I'll just leave a demon here just in case somebody comes back. Boring. Since I like these next 2 theories equally, we're going to talk about the one that's most likely not true first, and talk about the one that's most likely true second. Now, talking about this theory does require a little bit of Shinto mythology background. But actually understanding how Shinto mythology layers into Demon Slayer as a whole, both thematically and chronologically, kind of gives this theory a good amount of credibility. We're not going to do an entire Shinto mythology summation here, but we do need to talk about a specific event in Shinto lore. Essentially, within Shinto lore, there is a thing called the Kagura, specifically the Kagura ritual. You see, the Kagura ritual originates from Amaterasu, Amaterasu being the sun goddess of Shinto lore. One day, Amaterasu was plunged into despair and threw herself into a cave to live out the rest of her days. The only problem is when the sun goddess retreated into this cave of despair, the entire world was cast into darkness. And this is bad. Plants and animals and humans need crops. So the gods started to speculate on how to get Amaterasu out of this cave. And this is when the goddess of revelry and dawn, Amino Uzume, decided to start doing a dance outside of the cave every single day to lure Amaterasu out. And Amino Uzume did this dance until Amaterasu came out of the cave and brought sunlight back to the world. And from this story, the Kagura ritual was created. It is a ritualistic dance that honors the gods. However, in Shinto mythology, gods and your ancestors hold similar weight. So the Kagura ritual is also done in order to honor your ancestral spirits. And this is exactly the reason that Sumiyoshi began the Hinokami Kagura, in order to honor Yoruichi. However, by doing the Hinokami Kagura, he was also honoring the gods, specifically the sun god, Amaterasu. And this is where this theory gets a little complicated, so buckle in and stay with me here. It's never explicitly stated that Muzan made Nezuko on purpose. It's more heavily implied that he just made her a demon, highly doubting that she would survive the transformation. So this theory, kind of in a roundabout way, says that Muzan never had plans for Nezuko, that he made her a demon out of spite, not really caring whether she was going to survive or not, but that she was protected by the sun goddess. And she was protected by the sun goddess because the Kamado family was largely loved by the sun goddess. This is 1, because of the Hinokami Kagura, but 2, for a lot of other reasons. You see, Yoruichi and Michikatsu are basically meant to represent Amaterasu and Tsukiyomi. Amaterasu being the sun goddess and Tsukiyomi being the moon god. Amaterasu and Tsukiyomi feud all throughout Shinto lore. On top of that, Yoruichi's mother, the one who saved him from being killed as a baby, was a priestess in the temple of the fire god. So all of these points culminate into the theory essentially stating that all of the spiritual ancestors of the Kamados and the fire god stopped Nezuko from becoming a full demon, allowing her to keep an ounce of her humanity and therefore fight against Muzan's control. And this theory actually has a leg to stand on. I'm not going to spoil one of the reasons that this theory has a leg to stand on, but if you look at Nezuko's blood demon art, Flaming Blood, her connections to a possible fire god or even just her ancestral spirits make a lot of sense. The theory makes even more sense when you consider the fact that the swamp demon hypothesized that Nezuko must have received a massive amount of blood from Muzan, because this is the only way that it would make sense that she's as strong as she is. But whenever we've seen Muzan give a large amount of blood to a regular human being, they just usually die, implying that Nezuko probably should have died from her demon transformation, but was protected by something. On top of this, when we consider Tanjiro, who is her brother, it also makes a lot of sense. Tanjiro's spiritual core, which we see in the Mugen Train arc, represents a sun. And when he kills demons and transitions them to the afterlife, they describe the feeling as warm. So to assume that both of them are blessed by their ancestral spirits or the fire god themselves, and that's why they have flame abilities and are also very strong, isn't insane. It's quite literally just a book out of Shinto mythology, which Demon Slayer is basically a hard copy of. With that theory wrapped up, let's get to our third and final theory, the theory that's most likely the right one. In order to talk about this theory, we need to talk about the point we talked about in the beginning of this video, Muzan's core want, the ability for demons to walk in the sun. For quite literally thousands of years, Muzan has been converting as many people as he can to turn into demons. This is 1, to increase the size and power of his army, but 2, in order to find a demon who might one day be able to walk in the sunlight, or 3, find him the blue spider lily. The higher his numbers are, the higher the chance that he gets one of these things to happen. So this theory essentially branches in two directions. The first direction simply states that Muzan was trying to add numbers to his demon army and hope that one day Nezuko would stumble upon the blue spider lily. And that theory is fine, I guess. It makes sense, sort of. And the other theory states that Muzan knew, sort of, about our second theory. Essentially, Muzan knew that the Kamado family was loved by the sun, or the fire god. And because he knew that the Kamado family was loved by the fire god, that there was a possibility if they were demons, they would be able to walk in the sunlight. And if these demons were able to walk in the sunlight, he would be able to figure out as to why they were able to do that by genetic research or just absorbing them. Regardless, Muzan would now be in a situation where he would be able to walk in the sunlight by researching the Kamado demons. So once again, this theory takes another split that says in actuality, Muzan tried to make every single Kamado member a demon and only Nezuko survived. Or that he saw something special in Nezuko and therefore only tried to make her a demon. Regardless of what variation of a variation theory you believe in, Nezuko is now a demon. And whether or not Muzan was trying to make all the Kamados or just Nezuko a demon, he was doing it in order to find demons who could walk in the sunlight. And the Kamados, who were loved by the fire god, were his best option. And this, more likely than not, is actually why Muzan did it. But what do you guys believe? Why do you guys think Nezuko was turned into a demon? What do you think Muzan's greater motivations were? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Listen, I'm not saying that Muzan was onto something, but Swordsmith Village arc, here we go.